Hi everyone, this is Bryan Hayes and welcome to episode 28 of the Music Mind podcast. Today my special guest is professional pedal steel guitarist Travis Toy. Travis has been living and working full-time as a musician in Nashville, Tennessee since 1999. He continues to record, teach, tour and perform, playing the instrument that he first heard as a child when his father played steel guitar in the family home. Please enjoy my conversation with Travis Toy. Well, hi, Travis, and welcome to the Music Mind podcast. It's great to have you here today, all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, as my special guest for episode 28 in the series.
Awesome. Hey, Bryan. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Our audience have just seen and heard a real close-up of your hands on the pedal steel, playing a real hot sort of country solo against Johnny Cash's famous Folsom Prison Blues.
Yeah.
I guess that's a typical style of steel that maybe the few people in the general public who recognise what a pedal steel is, that's probably the more familiar style that they hear on it. But today we're going to see and hear you play in a whole lot of different styles on the instrument, and we're going to get to showcase just what an amazing instrument the pedal steel is. So it is quite a rare instrument. How did you find it? How did you find your way to the pedal steel?
Yeah, so I grew up in sort of a musical, well, I say musical family, not a musical family, so to speak. My mom and dad both actually met playing music. My mom was a vocalist, and my dad played drums and pedal steel and guitar, and was sort of a multi-instrumentalist. But drums and pedal steel, I suppose, were sort of his main instrument. So I grew up just some of my earliest memories are seeing my dad play, going to gigs that kids were, barn dance or something that a kid could get into, and seeing my dad play steel in bands. So I sort of got the itch to do it sort of naturally from seeing my dad do it. Actually, I started on drums, and I think the summer, I think I was 12. I have to assume my mom was probably tired of hearing me beat on the drums in our small house, and said, "Hey, you know what? You should go in there and try to play your dad's steel guitar." And I went, "Okay." And off I went. So yeah, it's to your point, it's certainly a more rare instrument than a six-string guitar or drums or bass or any other thing. But yeah, obviously having one in the house that my dad was playing was certainly, my gateway to having access to one and all that. So yeah, I feel like that's one of those instruments, unless you have a family member or, someone who has one, or have a way to have access to one, especially when you're a kid, because it's not a cheap instrument, even on the low end.
You and I share a few things, even though we're on the other side of the world. I've been playing steel. I play a lot of instruments, but I took up steel, I think it was in about 1977. And over here in Australia, if you think it's rare to see a steel player in the USA, I'm telling you, over here in the 1970s, I think there was about 4 pedal steel players in the entire country. But my path into it was interesting. I never saw one in real life. I would come home from school as a school kid and put the TV on, and the Monkees were big when I was growing up. And they played a song called Listen to the Band. And my brother is 4 years older than me, and he's a professional guitarist all his life. But we were sitting there, listen to the band. What's that? Is that a guitar? What's that instrument? And listen to the band.
Yeah.
We're scratching our heads, just what is that? And many years later, I find out that, well, that's the great Lloyd Green playing pedal steel
Mm.
with the Monkees from Nashville. But it was that
Yeah.
sound of that instrument that started me doing some research. And essentially, my brother was so much better than me on guitar that I got into steel just to get out of his way, just to get
Yeah.
noticed. So I bought an Emmons pedal steel, just cost a fortune. Um, a little 10 string push pull, and in those days string breakage was horrendous. I mean, it was, in E ninth tuning, it was a suicide watch when you sat down and started playing and pressing that little .011 string 100 times
Yeah.
up and down. So I got to the point where I was actually scared to play it. I solved that by detuning down to D ninth, and I've spent my whole life. I still to this day play in D ninth tuning, even though
Oh, really?
the steel's only for the purpose of, I just could not. I was scared to play it because of that.
Yeah.
When that string goes, it's like a rifle shot going.
When I was playing and learning when I was a kid, yeah, I didn't, obviously didn't have the budget to change strings frequently. So you would play them until they broke, right? And
Yes,
the third string, especially, and sometimes the fifth string, broke a lot of third strings. You can't see on here, but I have on the tops of on a couple of my fingers, I still have little scars from where they would break and cut
yeah,
and break the skin. Yeah, it
yeah.
would, 'cause they're at such high, so I'd beat
Oh,
them and it would break
yeah.
and cut the top of my finger. And I've got little scars on the tops of my fingers. Yeah, there's
It,
nothing more nerve-wracking than
oh,
winding up a third string and just going.
that's yeah. And in my mind, I was almost counting. Oh well, that's got to be about
Yeah,
200 pushes of that pedal. Yeah, in
that's
my
right.
mind, I was sort of thinking it's got to be around the corner. So it's
Yeah,
interesting. Not only you've answered one of my questions because you play the steel so well, and you've obviously got such an early start seeing your dad play it.
yeah,
Because when I started, I want to get onto your educational stuff as we go through because you're doing a fantastic thing. When I finally got the pedal steel, and I think I might have been 15, the
yeah.
only instructional material available in Australia at that time was an incredibly out of date Mel Bay book, which was for an 8 string pedal steel. That shows you the era it was in. Yeah. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
well, what are these other 2 strings? And a 12-inch LP Showbud album by Neil Flans,
Hmm.
where he recorded, whatever it was, 10 hot country riffs for the pedal steel. That's
Right.
it. So when you first started, did your dad kick you off?
I will say that it's interesting because I did grow up sort of just hearing my dad play, so sort of immersed in the sounds of it. And also before I started playing, I had gone to so my dad also he wrote a dad wrote a chord finder book for steel guitar called Coordinator that he used to sell. He used to have a vendor booth at the St. Louis shows and different steel shows around.
Great.
So before I actually played, I had gone to the St. Louis shows and stuff. I just sort of I had been immersed in the sounds of it so much from just those things and hearing Dad listen to, Buddy Emmons albums and Lloyd Green albums, and then hearing Dad play, that I had a really good. I think one leg up I had was, aside from Dad being there to show me stuff, was just I had such a great already understanding of what things should sound like on a steel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really wasn't the sound of it wasn't mysterious to me because I heard it so much already by that age. So I had a good, idea in my head of what things should sound like when I was doing them correctly. So building on that, and then having Dad around to, I remember I would, he'd come home from work at 5, and I would have been sitting there playing a couple hours since I got home from school, and I go, hey, Dad,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
about this? And he go, yeah, yeah. He go, you get one thing, you get one note wrong there, or he goes, listen, see, it's different, and he'd point out, some things I was doing wrong. But yeah, certainly, Dad early on, I mean, he showed me, grips and the basics and all that stuff. But like I said, I think I had definitely an advantage. I already had so many of the sounds of it in my head, and I sort of knew what I was going for and trying to achieve. That, yeah, I've never really thought about that before. That was certainly probably a big, having just listened to
Oh,
it, steel guitar music before I attempted to start playing it, right? It sort of, I
yeah.
had a great idea of what it should sound like in a perfect world.
Now, was it a double neck you were sitting behind your dad's or a single neck?
Funny story. So the full story on that
Yeah.
is because if anybody's familiar with me, most people know that I don't play C6. I play E9, and I sort of certainly attempt to get a wider range of sounds out of the E9 than maybe some do.
Yes.
But so it's funny. So the guitar that Dad had, and I actually have the guitar in the closet back there, was an MCI that he bought. He bought at the St. Louis show, and it's one that Buddy Emmons had played on stage, I guess that year or something. So he thought it was cool. So it's a red and black MCI guitar,
Yeah.
and it was a double neck.
Yep.
And so Dad didn't play any C6, uh, in his playing didn't really, like, very, very minimally dabbled in it, but played a lot of E9. So the story went, so we had gone to the St. Louis show one year, and it was like kind of the first year that I know Buddy had it. A few other people had the B to B flat change on a guitar, which lower, for any steel players that are watching. I assume it's mostly steel players that are watching. The pedal that lowers the fifth and tenth string a half tone to B flat, right?
Yeah.
So, and most people that were doing that had it on some kind of knee lever, either a vertical or added a staggered knee lever or something.
Yes.
And so we came back home, and I said, Dad, I really want that. I really want that change. And we didn't have any way to do another knee lever. And he goes, well, you're not really playing any C6, are you? I said, no. He goes, well, I'll tell you what, we'll take the C6 neck off of the back, and then we'll have a bunch of extra parts to
Ah,
add
yeah.
pedals and stuff. And I
Yeah.
said, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a kid. I'm like, yeah, Dad, yes.
Yeah.
So
That's right. Yeah.
so we take, so again, we don't have any extra knee lever stuff, but now we have extra pedal, linkages and all the things, cross shafts and
Yes.
all this stuff. So he goes, I'll tell you what, we'll scoot A, B, and C over to the right one spot, and then we'll put the B to B flat pedal to the left of your A pedal.
Okay.
Because you're using it a lot with a pedal anyway, sort of going, combining, splitting it, and da 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 da, kind of
Yep.
got
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
chromatic, a note and tone and a half
Yeah.
note range with that. So I'm like, cool. So we put it there, and that's the origin of that for me. And I don't know that I'm the first person to ever do that, but I think um, I certainly have have influenced now a bunch of people to
Yeah.
do that and put that pedal to the left of the A pedal. It's just a great spot for it. I mean, I know a lot of people have it on a vertical. And so the funny story is, so I had it there. We probably did that when I was, I don't know, 14 or something, pretty early. I'd been playing a year and a half or something, maybe
Mm.
2 years. And so I played it that way and got obviously very comfortable with that change being there and incorporated into a lot of, that's a great change for voicings and C6 style,
Yes.
you know, things on the E9 tuning. So the funny thing is, when I moved to Nashville, I moved to Nashville with that guitar, with Dad's guitar. I said, all right, I'm taking your guitar. He wasn't playing much anymore at the time, so
You
I
stole
took
his
his
instrument. Yeah. Yeah.
stole his instrument, moved to Nashville. So I scraped enough money to buy my first guitar, and I bought an Emmons Legrand 2
Yep.
here in Nashville, and it had the B2B flat on a vertical, and I went, cool. I guess that's where it was supposed to be the whole time, right? So I'll just leave it there. So I start playing this guitar, and I hated it there. I'd gotten so used to it being where it was for me on the
Yeah.
floor
Yeah.
that, I tried it for a couple of weeks and went, nah, I can't put it back. Or I can't continue like that. So went in, had it changed, put it on the floor, and then put something else on the vertical. But
Mm.
yeah, it's just so that's a very long answer to the if I had a double neck or a single neck. Dad technically had a double neck, but he turned it into a single neck to get more parts, so we could add that change
Well,
to.
this is really relevant because one thing you do remarkably is you get some really extended, wonderful voicings out of the E ninth tuning. Anyone who
Yeah.
watches you and they're going to hear you play, it's an illusion. You sort of think, is that a sixth tuning or what is it? So I want to
Right.
play now for the audience. I want to let the audience see and hear you play quite a lot today. There's a great
Okay.
clip of you playing the Panhandle Rag. You're at the station
Yeah.
in live. Now you are on a double neck, but are you telling me you're actually playing Panhandle Rag? It sounds like the C6 neck. Are you actually playing that on the C6th or on the E ninth in that clip?
So it'll always be E9. That I absolutely don't, I literally have no idea how to play C6. Never had one. The double neck guitar you probably, is it a what
Uh,
color is the guitar? I have not seen it.
MSA, I think. An
Is it a
MSA?
red
Yeah,
MSA?
a red
So
sort of
so
MSA. Yeah.
so here's a fun thing. So I have a red. It's actually the first MSA I got from there. It is a D10.
Yeah.
In that video, I am playing the front neck E9th, but the back neck of that guitar is an A9. It's like a baritone E9th
No.
tune.
Okay.
So it has exactly the same changes. Every single change is the same. And as where, you had one and you're playing a D9,
Yeah.
I just tuned one on down to A to kind of give me a baritone. It's just kind of an experiment.
For anyone who does play pedal steel, and in fact, our audience is a real broad audience. For this
Yeah.
episode, I think it will largely be steel players who recognize your name, but all different instrumentalists, all different musicians interested in the creative life is the audience for
Right.
the Music Mind podcast.
Awesome.
But for the steel players, I've got to admit, I thought that's got to be C6. I played steel all my life,
Yeah.
and in this version of I thought that's got to be C6. So let's have a look and listen. This is a great band. The
Awesome.
station I think it's a pretty famous venue, isn't it, in Nashville? It's
It
been
is,
around.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's really traditionally a bluegrass venue and very much actually is still majority of the stuff that goes on there is bluegrass, but it's in an area of town that they call the Gulch now. It's been renamed the Gulch, which is just if you've lived here long enough, it was 12th Avenue, but it's funny. It's the last remaining old building that is still in
Ah,
that area of town. Everything else has been, you
wow.
know, knocked down skyscrapers, like all modern stuff, and it's
Okay.
almost like a cartoon character, last remaining like little,
Oh,
original building, and it's
yeah.
still there, and it's awesome. Yeah. So fun thing about this gig, so that the clip that this is from, so I played after COVID. I started doing that gig. Doug Jernigan had done that gig for many years. It's with the lady. Well, she's not singing because it's instrumental, but Val Story and Carl Jackson and Larry Cordell, who wrote Highway 40 Blues, like great prolific country songwriter.
Yes.
I don't remember. I think maybe Justin Branham's playing fiddle in this clip,
Yeah,
and
there's a great fiddle player. Great fiddle player.
yeah, Mike Bubb that's probably playing upright bass, and Larry Adam Manuik is probably playing drums. But uh,
It's
yeah, so it
great.
was fun so Doug did that gig for many years, and Doug Jernigan needs no introduction to steel players, tremendous,
Fantastic.
absolute one of my heroes. So
Yep.
yeah, when they called me to do that, I went, God, do I want to do a gig that Doug's been doing? I went, yeah, I'll do it. It'll be fun. So I had a lot of fun doing that gig. I did it for about a year, and then I just got so busy doing other stuff that I couldn't commit to being down there every Monday. But the year I did it was a lot of fun.
Well, the other
Yeah,
thing I'll just ask the audience to have a look at is you do have a lot of fun when you play. In fact, in this clip,
yeah.
you've designed a set of LED lights under your steel rack to put some
Oh
attention to
yeah.
your
Is that
pedals.
about doing the thing where I'm turning the light on and off
Yeah,
and messing
well,
with it? Yeah,
we won't see that in the clip, but we'll see the lights on.
gotcha.
And I think that's great. And you're also having a lot of fun just smiling at the band. Let's have a look and a listen to a great Western swing band here with Travis in the spotlight, sounding very much like Buddy Emmons on the C6 at the time, but he tells me it's an E9th tuning.
Believe it or not, smoke and mirrors.
Oh, fantastic, Travis. That's a great band. Everyone in that
Yeah.
band are having a ball. It's live, and it's what music should be. It's just
Yeah.
unrehearsed, just shooting the breeze.
Yeah,
Now, I
yeah.
really recommend that all the viewers check out your website, which is just your name, travistoy.com. It's a great website.
Thanks.
And on there, you list at least 40 or more wonderful artists that you've performed and recorded with. And
Yeah.
some of these are household names. Trisha Yearwood.
It's a diverse list for sure. There's a lot of interesting
Oh,
stuff in that list.
you've got everyone from Lionel Richie to Garth
Yeah,
Brooks and Alan. Like, I would have
yeah,
expected just the country crew, but it's beyond the
right.
country crew. What's it like? Tell us a bit about your life. I think you moved there in 1999, I think it says on your
Yeah,
website, to Nashville. So,
yeah,
25 years. And have
yeah.
have you been a full-time professional musician right across, or did it start a little mix of having to do other stuff as well as play? What's been your journey in Nashville?
Yeah, so before I moved, so when I was it's a much longer story. It'd be a way longer podcast if I told the story, but super abridged version
Yeah, okay.
is
Yeah.
I was doing playing in clubs when I wasn't even 21. I was a teenager
Yeah.
playing 3 or 4 nights a week in clubs in the Lexington, Kentucky area and also Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes.
And working for a guy in the studio playing on jingles
Yeah.
locally, playing on like local market jingles, working in the studio with him. So I was doing these gigs, and I guess I was probably 19, and I had done. We were playing in Louisville. I was playing in Louisville with a group of guys, and we opened big. There's a big place there that's gone now. It used to be called Coyotes, but it was sort of a big Billy Bob's type of a dance hall country place.
Yep.
And you'd play a gig there, and then on the weekends you'd have major label, larger country artists come in and headline, and then you would open for them. So we opened for one Saturday night, opened for Aaron Tippin,
Okay.
who any country music fans will be familiar with Aaron Tippin from the 80s and 90s. And so it was a good band. The band in Louisville that I was in was a very good band. And it's funny, as the opener, your goal as an opener is always to outplay the headliner, right? To
That's
to
it.
sort of
That's that's
sort of mark your
yeah.
territory, right?
That's it.
Or
Yeah.
whatever, or impress or whatever. So we
Yeah.
were playing some hot stuff, right? So we opened, and Aaron's steel player at the time, a guy named Larry Nally, who I owe a great deal of Larry's the reason I moved to Nashville. So Larry walks up, and I didn't know him, and he goes, "Hey, I'm Larry. I play steel for Aaron." I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you." I said, "It was really like you playing." He goes, "What are you doing? Do you live here, or where you at? What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I play for a living here in this area." I said, "I want to move to Nashville, but I don't want to move to Nashville and not have a gig." I said, "I'm making a living playing music here. So if I move to Nashville, I would, a gig, or it kind of doesn't make sense, right?" And he goes, "Okay." He goes, "Write you, get your name and number, and if I hear anything, I'll give you a call or whatever." And I said, "Cool." And it's funny, I kind of thought, I don't know, I think I thought that he was just being nice and kind of, blowing smoke, as they say. But it was probably, I don't even know if it was a week later, I get a call from somebody in Nashville who Larry had given my name and number to and recommended me for this audition. So I went to Nashville, auditioned for a band that was playing at the Wild Horse Saloon at the time, and got that gig, and moved to Nashville with a gig playing, kind of doing the same thing, playing at the Wild Horse. And they had, at the time, there was a Wild Horse in Nashville, and then also one in Disney in Orlando, at
Okay.
this place that used to be called Pleasure Island, where it's now downtown Disney for anybody that knows Disney, but it used to be like an adults only, like, music. It was for the adults to get away from the kids,
Yeah.
at night.
Yeah.
There was the Wild Horse and the BET Jazz Club and like all these like adult venues. So it was there in Nashville, and you'd play in Nashville for a week and then go play in the one in Orlando for a week and go back and forth and do the same thing, where you opened for major label, headlining acts on Friday and Saturday night. So as soon as I started doing that, I started meeting other, road musicians and touring musicians. And, it's that thing where you just kind of you got to find a way to get your foot in the door and start meeting the people who are the people that will actually recommend you
Yeah.
and get you a gig when something opens up. And through that, I met right around that time I met Randall Curry, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know. Randall had been playing for a country artist named Bryan White, and he was leaving to go start playing with this new artist named Brad Paisley
Oh,
at the time.
yeah,
So
yeah,
Randall got me an audition for Bryan. So
yes,
I auditioned for Bryan and got that, and then that wound up being my first sort of major label artist touring
yeah.
gig. And like I said, once you get one, you just start meeting everybody that's in that circle of working musicians, and it becomes easier to. It's a lot easier to get the second one and so on and so forth than it is to get the first one. The first one is sort of like, you know, right place, right time,
Well, that
you
is
know.
such an interesting story because I did a podcast with Steve Dawson, who's a great steel
Yeah,
player and Weisenborn player, and that ex-Canadian, but living in your town now. And he did a wonderful interview with Lloyd Green not that long
mm,
ago. And on that interview, he asked Lloyd, what was it like coming to Nashville in the 1960s? And Lloyd
yeah,
told this amazing story that he said, look, he decided he's going to give it a go, a bit like you. He's
yeah,
saying, look, I'm playing steel as good as everyone else I'm hearing. So he rocks up to Nashville, no gig, turns up there and struggled to get his first recording session. But somehow or other, just through how the dominoes fell, he
yeah.
cracked a recording session that actually went really well. And he went home and he told his wife, I'm in. He said, I'm going to
Yeah.
sit around.
Yeah.
And he said, that phone's going to ring. He said, it went really good. Everyone patted me on the back and said, that's great. And 6 years later, he got his second session. For,
Right.
for
Yeah.
6 years, Lloyd
Yeah.
Green sold shoes at a shoe shop in Nashville,
Right.
waiting for his break. And of course,
Crazy.
he went on to record, I think it's 116 number one country hits and
Yeah.
thousands. He just went on to become, but isn't that he actually sort of was one step away from selling the steel. He just couldn't
Right.
buy a gig. Do you think you are in the right spot geographically on the planet to be a professional steel player?
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, I think, per capita, I mean, there's certainly going to be more pedal steel jobs that can, support a mortgage and and whatever, feed a family than there are going to be in any other cities, just country music capital of the world, right? But
Yeah.
um, there's actually a lot of guys playing steel in LA and doing well, and it's sort of I don't New York, not I mean, I know a couple guys in New York, but it's obviously there's not as much of a country scene in New York. There is really kind of a country scene in LA just because so many people go back and forth from LA to Nashville. That's
Yeah.
kind of a common,
Yeah.
a common thing. But, I'll say too, I mean, there are plenty of people that move here and have and shall sell shoes for, 6 years or more.
That's
I just kind of,
yeah.
my thing of wanting to, and I just got lucky, meeting Larry in Louisville after that gig. I just, as I didn't want to, I wasn't prepared to move here and do that. I wanted to
No.
move here with a gig and
Yep.
be doing that. So that was kind of my, you know, that was my, those were my conditions. If I can't move here and have a gig, then I'm not ready to, haven't made the right connection yet. Because
Well,
again, I was making a living playing music in Lexington, in that area. And I was going, well,
we'll go
I'm not
back.
going to
You go home, I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
I'm not gonna leave a job where
No.
I'm making a living playing music and go not
Yeah.
do that. I
Yeah.
was like, that doesn't make any sense. So,
No.
uh,
That's great. I want to move towards
yeah.
your music education side of life
Mhm.
now. You've got, as I said, when I started on Steel, mate, there was no videos, there was nothing. In Australia,
Yeah.
you are literally hung out to dry. Good luck, mate. Have a go at that.
Yeah.
And in a way, I like it because I suppose I've taught myself and I just play like me. I'm not, a
Yeah.
clone of anyone. I haven't followed a book through and through. But if I had my time over again, I would have absolutely loved for there to be a site like what Paul Franklin has done and you are doing. In fact, I want to just play, there's a great little short tutorial promo clip that I want to introduce this discussion with. I'll just play it
Okay.
so that people can see. You sort of introduce in a nice little 1 minute video a bit about how your site works for teaching the pedal steel guitar. Let's have a look at
Yeah.
that.
Okay, that's what it sounds like, so check this out. It's not very hard at all. The lick sounds something like this. All right, I instant replayed that. Now let's talk about that for a second. This is a subscriber request for a descending double stop lick in a Brad Paisley tune called American Saturday Night. So you got... now that you've seen that, let me talk you through that. And so we're in A, right? And back 2 frets in B and C on 3 and 4 is a position I use a lot for like a dominant 7 because it gives you those same 2 notes that you get for an A, right? Or go down an octave, right?
So, Travis, I love those multi-camera angles. You can see the pedals, what you're doing on your feet.
Yeah.
You can see the left and right hands. You can see your bar movements. You have these auto slow downs. I mean, in my day, it was putting coins on a record player,
Yeah.
trying to slow down. What was
People don't know how good they have it. I didn't have any of that either.
And you also have, I guess you lead a busy life. I know trying to set up this podcast, you've been doing so much work. We've managed to sneak in a spot here. You are a busy guy playing the pedal steel, which is fantastic to know. What was the genesis of this tutorial? How did this develop? What started this project?
Yeah, so I had thought about doing it for a while, and honestly, I had thought about doing it right about the time. So Paul Franklin has a teaching side as well, and right about the time I was thinking about doing it, and then Paul launched his, and I went, oh well, okay, well, I'll wait. It's his time to go, and I clearly Paul's incredible and a hero to myself and many other people on the instrument, but So I don't know when he launched his, maybe a year or 2 before COVID, maybe 2018 or something in there, 2019. And so when COVID hit, everything kind of ground to a halt with touring and sessions and everything else. And it was funny. I had been doing some Skype lessons and Zoom lessons with people here and there, not a ton. When I had time, maybe 3 or 4 a month at the most, and it was the thing that happened was, so COVID hit and everybody was all of a sudden at home, not working, and just sitting around with their instruments. So really literally overnight, all of a sudden I had the amount of requests. People were emailing me wanting to do lessons and stuff, and it got so it was such a ridiculous. It was like, whoa, okay, hold on, like I didn't even have time to, it was impossible to service everyone that was asking for a lesson. I went, okay, maybe I need to go ahead and launch this many people are wanting, teaching from me. So I wound up, started working on it pretty, I didn't have anything else going on. So I was filming, videos for 8 hours a day for about a month or so, to get sort of the initial block of content I wanted to launch with, a certain amount of stuff to feel good about, putting the thing up. So I filmed for a while, and I launched it in May of 2020. And I had, it's been a blessing. I had a bunch of people. I've got a lot of people on there learning, and I've had, it's very humbling. I've had everybody from, people who've been playing a day to literally heroes of mine on the instrument have been on my site, and signed up, and it's and everybody in between, and it's I love it. It's funny to your point, saying you didn't have any instruction. There really, I guess there was some by the time I was learning, but I didn't really have access to any. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. I couldn't afford to go out and buy, you know,
No.
uh, any of the stuff that was around, any of the printed stuff. So yeah, I kind of did it on my own. I just spent, a crazy amount of time learning painstakingly anything that I thought was cool.
You've
You
got
know,
your own way of playing, and it's a modern way of playing. I
yeah,
just want to
thanks.
play a little bit of a very short little excerpt of you playing Steve Lukather's solo from Rosanna on the
Right. Yeah.
on the pedal steel, because
Yeah.
you'd fully expect 101 chicken picking licks, 50 ways to
Right.
get from C to F, but you certainly don't expect to work out.
Yeah.
Hello. So that's how Steve
Roseanne.
played Roseanne. Let's have a quick look at it, because this, to me, I love this. This opens up the pedal steel to a whole different set of ears who would
Yeah.
otherwise perhaps feel that's old timey, some
Hmm.
old country bar in the movies. Let's have a quick look at you playing the Rosanna solo. So, Travis, I understand you
Yeah.
actually had the chance to play with Steve Lukather, the famous lead guitarist from
Yeah.
Toto. What was that experience like? How did that happen?
That came about through I've done a few things with Steve. That came about initially through when I was playing for Rascal Flatts. Jay DeMarcus, who's the bass player and frontman for Rascal Flatts, it just knows Steve. They met through some random
Yeah.
music business thing, and buddied up, and then so the first time I played with him, I think we were playing in Philadelphia one night, and Steve was in town with maybe Toto or something, and he just came over and sat in with us on our set. And I actually have a DVD of that
Oh, yeah,
from front of house from us
yeah,
playing. And the
yeah,
funny thing about that is, I mean, anybody, especially in my age range, in my mid 40s, be
yeah.
45 tomorrow actually, as we're taping
Oh,
this.
happy birthday, mate. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
But anybody in my age, I mean, any musician that I know is a huge Toto fan. I know I am,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
so, it's funny when somebody like Steve goes up and shows up to a band of guys in my age and goes, "You guys know Rosanna?" We're like, "Yeah, we got you." Yeah, we all know Rosanna.
Yeah,
Probably know it better than you do at this.
yeah,
It's like we
that's
got it. So he did Rosanna and
it's
one or
wonderful.
two other Toto songs, and then set in on some Rascal Flatts, "Life's a Highway" and "These Days," and just
Yeah, yeah,
shredded at the end. It was
yeah.
awesome. And
It's wonderful. Now I want to
yeah,
take you back now to more of a traditional role, or what some people believe is a traditional role for the
yeah,
E ninth steel. You're playing a beautiful song here. You're back at the Station Inn, but this time you're backing Paul Brewster singing a
yeah.
beautiful song, Kentucky Waltz.
Hmm.
I just want to talk a moment, because I play and teach a whole lot of instruments, and one of the most frustrating things for me is to try and get a student to understand it's a different art when you're backing a vocalist to when
Right.
you're taking your solo. And I don't
Yeah.
care whether they're a saxophone player or whatever. It's really hard, particularly with the younger people, to say, mate, your job is not to be in the spotlight when that singer's singing. You may or
Right.
may not get a little solo, but don't go in the corner in a ball of tears if you don't get a solo. Can
Right.
you talk, because the reality of life is, as instrumentalists, we spend most of our life backing vocalists. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your philosophy about the way to approach, and we'll talk on pedal steel. Here you
Yeah.
are with a classic country song, a beautiful song. How do you approach backing a great vocalist here like Paul Brewster? What goes through your mind as you're doing it?
Yeah, I think so. To start out, to your point, what's funny. So we've seen a clip of me playing Panhandle Rag where I was the star of the moment, right? And it is
Correct.
about me in that moment. And of course, we're showcasing the rest of the band, but
Yeah,
it's my moment, right? It's finally about me.
that's it.
Spotlight's on me. I'm doing what I
Enjoy the
want.
moment. Absolutely.
Enjoy the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Outside of that, and then fast forward to this clip of Kentucky Waltz, yeah, which is the norm for 99.9% of my existence is to be not the guy, not the featured guy.
No, no, that's right.
I avoid it actually most of the time if I can, but they're like, play an instrumental. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, what's funny about backing a singer is really early on, my dad really made sure that I understood um, the sort of unspoken laws and rules of of being a sideman, right? And a
That's right.
bandmate, and like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
doing and playing in clubs when I was, in my teens. Like I really had an early exposure to, yeah, to how to be in a band, right? How to participate in a band. What's your role? You know, um,
Yeah.
that's always an important thing. I think I'll even go as far as saying, I think a common thing specific to steel players, especially, is I think everybody always feels like they have to play all the time. You just always got to be playing something, and
Yeah.
like there are times when that can work, but the reality is steel guitar isn't a rhythm section instrument. It's not bass or drums or a
No.
piano or a rhythm guitar. It's a lead instrument, right? So there are some times when you can play a lot, but really the reality is, you're there to your musical spackle, right? You're there to fill in the holes, fill in the cracks, wait till there's a break in a vocal melody or line, say a thing or two. It's a conversation. That's the thing. You have to, if you're having a conversation like we are right now, we're not talking over each other, right? You wait till I get done. I wait till you get done to say something. It's the musical version of that, right? And to go even further down that rabbit hole, when I get done, you'll say something that complements what I just said. When you get done, I'll say something that complements or adds to what you just said, right? And it's
Fantastic.
it's
Yeah.
that it's that in music, right? And it's just learning. Yeah, it's showing, there's self-control in it. Obviously, you can't, go crazy. It's at the end of the day, it's funny, music, it's a service industry, right? You're serving a song. Biggest thing for young, you got to listen. Music is as much or more about listening to what's going on around you than it is what
And
you're actually doing. You have to react.
you do it beautifully here. Let's have a look and a
Thanks.
listen to Kentucky Waltz.
We were waltzing
That's beautiful traditional steel playing there, mate, and appropriate for the song. What a beautiful song,
Yeah.
Kentucky Waltz. You're also not scared to use effects on the steel. We've heard you play with a distortion sound on the Rosanna
Yeah.
solo. People like Robert Randolph, I guess, sort of made a career out of deliberately, I suppose, disrupting what might have been seen as the traditional path of the pedal steel, just taking it in
Yeah.
a different direction. And of course, he's made a lot of friends and I suppose some enemies too, as you always do. I just watched the Bob Dylan biopic over here, and the moment when Bob played electric at the folk festival, and the
Right.
whole the world thought the world was going to come to an end because Bob
Yeah.
plugged in. So
Right.
there's always disruptors. What's your take on where you think the steel might be heading, or maybe where you'd like to see it head?
It's always an interesting question, the where do you think steel's heading question.
Yeah,
Real quick on Roberts. I'm
yeah,
friends with Robert. He's a tremendous player. And one thing to note, about what Robert's doing, he's really, that comes from the tradition, the sacred steel traditions, which goes back into the Pentecostal church and,
yes,
and African American churches and all that stuff. And it's a great tradition and really, really incredible. Sort of Robert sort of brought it to the forefront, that style, and then created a gig around it, and him as the front man. And it's really neat to turn on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno and see a pedal steel front man
absolutely.
doing
Yeah,
it's great exposure for the instrument. It's people are seeing him do that have never seen a steel. And I don't know that there's another instrument that has come to prominence through such a specific genre path, right? Whereas, I mean, drums were being used in rock and country and jazz and every other instrument you can name, right? And then you had
yes,
steel guitar, which is sort of, obviously started in Hawaiian as non-pedal, but
yeah,
specifically to pedal steel, it's like it started being used in country and it just sort of came to prominence through one genre's pathway, right?
correct.
There's some exceptions for,
Yeah, yeah,
Jerry Garcia and different people playing, but for the most part, 98%
yes,
of pedal steel guitar has been in traditional country music. So it's because of that, and obviously because of that, it's like it's viewed through that scope. At the end of the day, I always tell people it's an instrument. It has the same 12 notes that all the other instruments behind you have. Like there's
exactly.
only
Yeah,
it's a tone generator,
yeah,
instrument. Is it a country instrument? No, of course not. No
no,
instrument is. A guitar is not a rock instrument,
no.
right? Like anything else. So, it's only limited by, to answer your question about where do I think steel's heading, it's only ever limited by the creativity of the player and what someone wants to say musically, right? And what they're willing to work out both from a facility technical standpoint and theoretically and everything else.
I want to bring this down now to this concept of sort of advanced chord melody playing, which you're a
Yeah.
master of, and the fact you're doing it on the E ninth neck is all the more kudos to you. We're gonna
Thanks.
take a little Christmas carol here called Jingle Bells, and you're just playing
Okay.
this in your lounge room or whatever with a backing
Yeah.
track. But the great thing here I love is this could have come out really hokey pokey. This could have been,
Yeah.
here we go. And the thing is, on that instrument, you've taken the time to find where those chords are. Not something near enough. You've actually found a voicing that is right. Let's have a look and listen to Jingle Bells, and we'll talk a little bit more about it when we come back. what are you thinking of, particularly when you're improvising?
Great question. I will say on the topic of it's, obviously this is always an interesting topic to talk to people about
Yeah.
improvisation. I've always thought, and I think I said this somewhere, maybe on my teaching site. I think if you really, I think if you really get, if you look at improvisation, I think there are multiple levels of improvisation that people get to. Um, and exist between, right? So what I mean by that is I think, obviously we're all a product of everything we've ever learned, right? Anything we've ever transcribed, listened to, absorbed, that's all floating around in the subconscious somewhere, right? For us to hopefully choose, pick from, or be inspired by, or whatever. Of course, getting that into facility and executing it is another part of that process. But I think, I think sort of I think there's a plane of improvisation that I do a lot as well, where you're really not creating something that is ultimately unique in the moment. You are regurgitating bits and pieces, right? Of a bar of something I learned 25 years ago, and some thing line that I thought was really cool. And that's super common, and I do that a lot. And that's, sort of, we talk about people sort of have their pet licks, right? Like their go-tos,
Yep.
things that they go to sort of by default, and you just piece, and the more you do that, you better you get at it, right? But you're not truly creating something unique in that moment. You're regurgitating learned information from your lifetime of playing music, right? I do think there is a plane beyond that, and sometimes if I'm really really hot and rolling, I'll get into that thing where I really am creating something unique in that moment that I will probably never do again. I wouldn't be able to tell you what it was as soon as I'm done. And I think that's its own sort of, that's the thing where it's like you sort of what is it? I feel like I'm sort of hovering above my own body, just kind of watching it happen. I don't know where that came from, like what I did, and I achieve that sometimes. But I think a larger, to be honest and fair, I think a larger time, most people exist in that the prior one, right, where
I
you're,
agree.
and again, it's not, you're still improvising. It's still improvising, but it's
Yes.
not a true one-to-one creative thing that's truly your voice happening in real time.
Vocals.
Yeah.
You're a pretty good singer. There's a wonderful track. There's a wonderful track. I want to talk to you about this because not too
Yeah.
many pedal steel players you associate with being, oh, well, they're going to step away from the steel or
Right.
stay behind it and sing a song. But
Yeah.
at a little place called the Listening Room, you've got
Hmm.
this wonderful trio. You've got a keyboard player, an acoustic guitar player. Both of those guys sing harmony with you. And you hop on the slide dobro.
It's funny. So the guy playing guitar is Brian White, was the first guy that I played. Now this is a
Ah,
way more recent video, but the song. So it's funny. I was doing a gig with Brian. This is
yeah,
many many years after I played for him. We
yeah,
just remained, and occasionally I'll play for him. And so it was his gig, and he
yeah.
said, "Hey, why don't you sing? Why don't you sing one?" And I went, "All right." So the song I sang is one of his songs. So I'm singing
It's a
singing his
beautiful
song.
song.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the dobro. Have you always mucked around a little bit on the dobro, or is it just once in a blue
Um,
moon, or you know?
Oh, I play a good bit of dobro. I didn't have a dobro until, I don't think I had one until I moved to Nashville, maybe a year or two. Actually, you know what? I got one on that first gig, on that Wild Horse gig that I started doing when I moved to town, and started messing around with it, and then kind of dabbled, but got into it a little bit, not to the depth that I did steel, but of course I'm already an adult at that point. I don't
Yeah.
have endless endless
No.
practice time, but I was messing with it, right? And then um, it's funny, I when I started playing with Patty Loveless, so on that gig, a large majority of her live shows we would do, if it was a 90-minute show, say, we do about 60 minutes of her electric country hits, and then we do about 30 minutes of bluegrass, because she also has some bluegrass albums and
Okay.
and all that stuff. And And when I say we do bluegrass, we do it in a very traditional way where it was just two mics
Yep.
on the stage, and you had to get up and work the mic and get back. Like not everybody was plugged in or any of
No,
that stuff, right? So
no.
it was a very traditional working of. If you're soloing, you get closer to the mic, you get back. So it's funny. I remember the first weekend of doing that gig, and I like I said, I've been playing dobro, and so to put it in just I guess terms that would make sense to people, I was playing dobro like a steel player, meaning that I was playing not I wasn't beating the
No,
crap out of the thing to
no.
get volume. I was kind of I was playing it the stuff I was playing was cool, but it was kind of wimpy on the attack side. And I'll never forget we did that first weekend and we did that bluegrass set and I didn't hear a thing I played. I mean, everything else was so loud. I was next to a banjo and there's a fiddle in my
And
ear
they're
and
up it, yeah.
and they're loud, right? This banjo's like
Yeah.
cannon going off next to my head.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
going, I'm not playing loud enough. Like I can't hear myself. And I literally went home that week and just reinvented what I was doing. I was like, I got a bigger thumb pick that I could
yeah.
really like
Hit it.
beat with. And I came back out, the weekend or two after that, and it just made me play dobro like a dobro player, meaning I was, the harder you play and they'll just keep getting
Yeah.
louder and sounding
Yeah.
better. It's like it sounds better the harder you attack it, at least if it's a really good instrument. And so that was kind of my thing. That was a real crash course for me on
dobro. Yeah.
on dobro, that gig. I really had to. I spent a lot of time messing with dobro when I was on that gig, practicing and getting better at it for those
Yeah.
bluegrass sets. Yeah.
But vocals, you can't just open your mouth and sing as well as you do on this One Small Miracle. So vocals must be a bit of part of your life, is it? Or you must enjoy singing,
You know what? Ironically, not. I mean, I enjoy singing. Yeah, I have sang a lot. Like I grew up when I was saying, or I don't know if I said it on the interviews, but I grew up in church, like singing and in choir. My mom was very, very, very good singer, vocalist. So I sort of had that in my blood as well. I haven't, I've done gigs where I've sang background vocals and, sang harmony in a band and done all that stuff. But, yeah, I like singing. I don't do it a ton, but people that know me know I can sing, and I wanted to do at least one vocal song on my album just to say I did it.
Say you did it. Well, let's have a look and a listen to One Small Miracle. Your two colleagues definitely appreciate your high notes in this. They break into a smile and look. It's a beautiful version. It's just recorded live. Anything live, again, we're not in the big recording studio. It is what it is. But it's a lovely feel. A good example of you out from behind the steel, playing a bit of dobro and using your voice as an instrument. Let's have a listen to One Small Miracle.
She's standing in the front door with her suitcase in her hand. I'm staring down the hallway, frozen where I stand. She says she doesn't love me anymore. Oh Lord, what can I do? It's gonna take a miracle to make her stay.
Travis, you've got an album on your website called Entry Point. It's in the store
Yeah.
section of your website. There's a couple of little audio grabs on SoundCloud from this
Uh-huh.
album, and I had a listen, and it's very modern, it's very contemporary, puts the pedal
Yeah.
steel in a modern setting. Can you tell us a bit about Entry Point? What's this album about?
Yeah, well, it was just the title was on the nose, right? It's my entry point into into doing a into doing an album. No, I that album I've wanted to do. So it's funny over the course of being an adult and being a musician all my life, I have sort of scattered recordings, just one-off things that I've done of varying qualities and not really one fell swoop at a project, and I kind of always wanted to do that. And I at a certain point I started recording that at the beginning of 2019, and just started writing and recording it. And I don't know, I the timing felt like because here's what I didn't want to do. I didn't, not that there's anything wrong with this, but most steel guitar albums are covers or maybe an original here or there, but for the most part it's steel guitar versions of a pop song, or it's a cover, or it's
Yep.
another version of Crazy Arms or whatever it is. And I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to write an album that was from my brain, like music that I created. It's a statement, my musical statement, right? And the other thing I wanted to do was touch on a few different just genres and styles, and get out, because there's some countries. There's an Alabama Jubilee on there that's got the what you would expect that to be, and a ballad that's a pretty thing, and then the title track, Entry Point. So going back to my youth, when I was playing drums especially, a lot of the stuff, even though I was listening to country music and hearing my dad play steel, a lot of the stuff I enjoyed playing drums to was actually on the jazz fusion side of things. Like a lot of Dave Weckl and John Patitucci records, and Lee Ritenour and Larry Carlton and all those guys. So tons of influence there musically. And so Entry Point is kind of like, what if Lee Ritenour and Larry did a steel song? It's very much down
It's
that
Yeah,
avenue,
it
right?
is.
That was
It's
kind of
beautiful.
yeah, that was kind of that. And
Yeah,
then there's a song called Wingman, which is a straight up kind of rock thing where I'm doing
yeah,
sounds like I'm doing tapping at one point, which
yeah.
is as wild. But that's very much me listening to Joe Satriani as a teenager, surfing with the Alien and Summer Song and all the things that
Yep.
Joe did. That's a direct, if you don't hear
Yep.
that correlation, then
No,
you're
that's
not paying attention.
yeah,
That, and there's a song called Lock the Door that is sort of just a modern fusiony. There's a group called Snarky Puppy that I really
yeah.
like. It's a bunch of
Snarky
North
puppy.
Texas
Yes.
guys.
Yep.
My buddy Mark Lettieri plays guitar in that group. That's kind of that thing on steel, I feel like, and there's a piano thing where I play piano, and piano and steel duet thing that's, a tune I wrote for my a daughter. I just wanted to, and a swing tune, Rootin' Tootin' is like a Western swing song. I just wanted to cover some ground, outside of the traditional scope.
I think
Includes
it's great.
traditional stuff,
Yeah,
but it's funny. And one of the best compliments I got on that album was, so I really wanted to, and above all that, honestly, I wanted to make a steel album that was enjoyable for musicians other than steel players to listen to, right?
absolutely.
That's not just so,
Yeah,
norm
yeah,
hokey, steel guitar
yeah.
records. I wanted the production value to be awesome. I wanted, so there's a guy, there's a buddy of mine I know. He goes, hey, he goes, I figured I'd tell you. He goes, so all the time, he's a steel player. He goes, so me and, every time me and my wife, like we go take a drive or something, or drive to dinner, he's like, I'll put in a steel guitar album from somebody. And he goes, I'll make it a song or two in. And she's going, can we listen? Let's please listen to something else. I just
That's
can't.
fine.
And
Can't
he
stand
goes,
it.
I got your album the other day. This is when it first came out. He goes, and we had he goes, we were driving somewhere like about an hour and a half or something from the house, going to see our daughter in
Yep,
college or something.
yep,
And
yep.
I didn't say anything. He goes, I just put your CD in and I turned it on. And he goes, she never said anything. He goes, we made it all the way through the album. And he goes, and I went to take it out. And she goes, Now you could play it again. It
Wow.
went, it's an album, it's a pedal steel album that a non-pedal steel player,
Yeah.
just civilian, my wife
Well, that
enjoyed.
is
She liked
that's
listening to it, and
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's the ultimate
That's your
mission
5-star
accomplished.
review. For the rest of this year or for quite a few months, you're on the road with Luke Bryan. Your website
Yeah,
does a great job of promoting a major tour. I think you're on about
yeah,
40 dates over about three or
yeah,
four
something like
months.
that.
Now,
Yeah,
here in Australia, surprisingly, Luke Bryan is not a name that I'm familiar with, but Australia hasn't really got that big of a country music market. There's no
yeah,
dedicated country music radio stations and that. But I
right.
did a little bit of research on Luke, and he's just happened to sold about 75 million records, which
Right.
is
It's a
no,
couple.
that's a
It's a
couple.
couple. Yeah,
Our
yeah,
greatest ever pop star, Kylie Minogue, has sold 80 million records,
yeah,
and Kylie's been very, very successful as an artist, but it just puts it into perspective. I'm
right.
from a country that has an almost non-existent country music market. You're going on
Mhm.
tour with a guy that's almost sold as many records as our most successful ever pop artist.
Right,
So it
right.
just puts it in perspective. Talking about perspective, what is it like sitting on stage with a major act like Luke? What's it like? I imagine everything's first class. You're going to have sold out concerts in major
Yeah,
venues. Most musicians, regardless of instrument, will never experience what it's like to tour with a genuine top tier artist. Just
right.
share a little bit about what's it feel like. You've been there. What is the experience
Yeah.
like?
I think to put it in a musician's, perspective, it's there's something, yeah, that's an experience that you don't get anywhere, not necessarily from the perspective of just how many people, I don't know. Well, it does have to do with how many people there is, but you know, uh, once there's a couple thousand people, like what's the difference
Yeah,
between that and,
yeah, yeah,
whatever, 40? I mean, I guess there is, but there's a it's fun. There's a definite there's an energy that's sort of not able to be experienced, I think, um, in any other way other than standing on a stage, with somebody that's got, a 30 or 40,000 people just kind of losing their minds over that person, and kind of, I mean, they're not losing their mind over me. They're losing their mind over Luke, but by proximity,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm standing right next to the guy, so I'm
yeah.
receiving the energy, and it's fun. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, it's one of those things I mean, you do it a lot, you get used to it, but I think as used to it as I ever have gotten, it's always fun, and it's always, yeah, it's just a nice little adrenaline rush, and sort of, like I said, that experience is sort of hard to get in any other way.
Do
Yeah.
you see your role any different in that major arena environment than you sitting there on steel at the station inn? Does it feel like there's more pressure on you? Are there more nerves? You are in the spotlight to a massive audience, but does it feel any different, or does it just feel like you are sitting at the station inn having a bit of fun?
What's funny, and ironically, and I think people always expect it to be the opposite of this. I've always found that there's more. I mean, in the situation where I will ever feel pressure is going to be that me being featured for Panhandle Rag in front of 30 people, right, or
Okay.
40, or however many
Yeah,
people
yeah,
were in
yeah,
that
yeah,
room.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
just because, even if I'm, we played Wrigley Field or whatever this year, there's 50,000 people there. Nobody's really paying attention to me, right? I mean, it's like I'm up there.
yeah,
People kind of are, but not really. I mean,
yeah,
unless I'm out there taking a solo, like the
yeah.
focus is never really on me. It's on Luke. I mean, I'm just kind of up there having fun playing the music, right? As
Yes.
opposed to, hey, here's Travis featured on this tune,
A, so-
that
a
he's
solo
that we've never
rendition of
attempted before, and he's not
yeah,
even really sure how he's going to get in or out of, and go, and
yeah,
there's
okay.
people filming, so in
Yeah,
case you
okay,
screw
okay.
up, like that honestly is more of a, and I mean, I don't really let that bother me either, but if there
No.
was going to be a situation, it's funny, it's something that's more intimate, if I'm sitting in this room and there's four people that are, really
Really
great musicians.
close to you. Yeah.
That's way more intimidating than,
Yeah.
80,000 people at,
Yeah.
the Superdome or whatever.
Okay, we're going to
Yeah.
listen to one more song where you play beautifully solo here. I grew up in an era where I got to see players like Joe Pass, the great jazz guitarist, on his own, in concert, sitting on a stool, entertaining
Incredible.
people just with his jazz guitar. No backing track, no boom crash opera in the background. And I've got to congratulate you. You're playing a hymn here, O Come Emmanuel, which I think dates back to the 1700s. This melody has been around for centuries. It's a glorious melody. It's a beautiful melody. And you do, in your own way, a Joe Pass style chord melody version. I know it's not a jazz, walking jazz thing. But mate, on pedal steel, on the E9th tuning, I know Buddy Emmons, if he was alive, he would congratulate you on this, because again, you've got all the right chords, all the right emotion, beautiful tuning. You're telling a wonderful story of a melody that has stood the test of time. I really can't I can't give you any more credit than this. This really sums up my respect for you as a musician, not a steel player. You happen to be playing steel, one of the hardest instruments of all. But when people watch this, they should be oblivious to that and just listen to the beautiful music you create. Let's have a look and a listen to one last track from Travis, O Come Emmanuel. Okay, Travis, what's your preferred method for people to get in touch with you? If they just want to reach out, say hello, book you for a session, how do you like people to get in touch with you?
I'm not hard to find. My email is extremely cryptic, travistoy@gmail.com. Can't figure that. Yeah.
Just send an email.
Or, I'm on Instagram, any of this, Facebook, Instagram, email, any of that stuff. There's actually, if you go to my website, there's a contact form through there. You can send me a message. Any of that stuff it'll all pop up on the old
phone. Yeah. Look, I hope out of this podcast, I hope hundreds of people who've never really heard a pedal steel, they might have heard it. I mean, they might have heard it at the start of on the Dark Side of the Moon album when they were growing up and not knowing what
that children or something.
Well, that's what I mean. Not those eerie sounds. The average person, if you stop them in the street, I remember when I first started playing pedal steel, I'd say to my friends, I'm playing a new instrument called a pedal steel guitar. And they say, a pedal steel guitar? What is it like? Is a guitar sitting on a pedestal? And I said, no, they're thinking it's a bird bath. They're looking at me, you're playing what? And no matter what I would do, it was just like, because it's not a common instrument outside of country music. And even in country music, it's not everywhere. Not every country act has a steel. But I'm hoping that through your playing today, we've been able to showcase that instrument in a variety of different settings. It's not just stuck in one rut. It's not stuck in a 70-year-old sort of cliche. So I really do hope through this podcast and your playing that there might be some people who think, I'd like to have a go at that. I guess
Yeah.
we touched on it earlier, a real barrier to entry. Well, there used to be two barriers to entry for me. It was the cost of getting an instrument and the lack of tuitional material. You
Right.
and Paul Franklin and a few others have absolutely addressed that second barrier. What's your advice? Just a final bit of advice. Someone, hey, they'd like to get into this instrument you're playing, but there's the cheap and nasty end of town and there's the professional end. Have you got
Right.
any advice of how someone dips their toes in the water as a novice pedal steel guitar player?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certainly even with aside from my website, which is a resource, but outside of that, I think if you're looking to get in and find an instrument and you don't know much about it, because it is I mean, steels are essentially one big mechanical thing, right? I mean, a lot can go wrong with them. They can have a lot of problems if they're not maintained and all that stuff. So my advice would be if you're looking for a guitar but you don't really know a lot about it, there's a ton of Facebook groups, pedal steel guitar, no drum. There's all these Facebook groups that have, thousands and thousands of people of them, very knowledgeable people in a lot of them. Get on there if you've got a guitar you're looking at, post a picture of it, go, hey guys, what's this? What do you guys think about this? There's a steel guitar forum is another website where there's classifieds where you can buy used guitars and for the most part, people are gonna treat you good on there and not take advantage of you and stuff. The community as a whole is a very helpful, informative group of people who are usually trying to help.
Do you have any final words of wisdom, not so much as a steel guitarist, but I guess as a professional musician? You've found a way to live your passion, playing
Yeah.
the instrument that you love. Have you got, looking back at your life, you're still only young, really, at 45, but what about some school-aged kid at the moment? They might be 13, 14, 15, getting to that stage where they have to make a choice coming down the near future. Do I go to university?
Right.
Do I study to be my dad wants me to be a lawyer or a doctor, and mum wants me to be a
Mhm.
radiologist, and the school counsellor has never said, have you thought of being a pedal steel player? You know, have you have you just got, from your experience, have you got any simple advice that you'd say to a person who's just, they love music, they
Yeah.
love the creative life, they're at that age where they've got to make a decision which way they're going to hop? Have you got
Yeah.
anything you'd like to share with the audience there?
Uh, I mean, it's easy. It's easy for me to say go for it because I have managed to put, at least so far, I've managed to pull it off. No, I think especially to young people. I mean, if you're not absolutely burdened yet with the responsibilities of a 40-hour week job and responsible for a family and all these other things. I mean, I don't think there's a better time to give it a shot, you know, and go, see what happens. I mean, I think if it's something you're passionate about, I think what you don't want to do is be 45 and go, man, I wonder what would have happened if I,
Yeah, yeah,
if I tried that, because it's one thing. I mean, maybe you go try it and it doesn't work out. In a couple of years, you go, all right, well, at least I tried it. Tried to make it work, and maybe it wasn't for me, maybe it wasn't meant to be, but now you don't. Now you know. I think going down the road of heading towards doing it for a living. I mean, it quickly. I think you have to have a certain level of drive. You got to be willing to hear no a lot and get turned down and always be self motivated and somewhere in there confident enough to push through adversity and like I said, just I think it weeds out the people that are driven enough to do it versus the
oh,
people pretty
yes,
quick, and that's you gotta it's not an easy way to make a living, yeah, and no matter what level, and the hustle never, people I think look at what I do, and I've
yep,
been blessed. I'm very successful at what I do,
yes,
but
yep,
the hustle never, I never stopped I mean, I'm always tired,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing essentially three full-time jobs at the moment. They're
Oh,
all music related, which is
yeah,
awesome, but it's a
yeah.
lot,
It's a
it's a
lot
lot
of
of
work.
work.
To end the podcast, every episode, I ask my guest if they'd be interested in doing a duet or a collaboration. And
Yeah.
you said yes, and you come up with a beautiful choice to do this on. Written in 1940 for the animated Disney film Pinocchio, the
Yeah.
beautiful When You Wish Upon a Star. It's an absolute Disney classic. And you're playing again, you're playing solo pedal steel, all the right chords, all the right harmony. And when I heard it, I thought, oh, I'm going to keep out of this guy's road because he's nailing it. So I just come along and played a few little cameo roles on the concert
Yeah.
flute, and the two work together really good. So we'll finish with that. Thanks, Travis. Thanks for being part of the podcast.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, I hope everybody that's listening and watching enjoys it. And yeah, if you're looking to make a living in music, come on in, jump in. It's never been a better time.
When You Wish Upon a Star. Thanks, Travis.
Thanks, Brian.